and a very warm welcome to State of Business on Art Television. I'm Hishain Ali and let's have a look at the headlines first. The government releases funds to purchase paddy harvest from the Yalla season. There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future, World Health Organization warns. News in detail. Director General of Health Services Dr. Anil Jasingh stresses that people should not drop the guard against the coronavirus since the threat is still widely spreading in Asia and world at large. In the meantime, a Prisons Department announced that the producing prisoners before courts has been temporarily halted concerning the situation of the country. Accordingly, 29 new coronavirus cases were recorded yesterday. Thus, 14 staff members at the Kandakadu Rehabilitation Center, 11 inmates of the Senapur Rehabilitation Center, and 2 associates of the COVID-19 patients in Rajangania and 2 returnees from the Maldives were identified as contracted the virus yesterday. Moreover, 5 persons have contracted the virus for today as of 4 p.m. today. Thus, 3 returnees from Oman and a close contact of Rajangania patient and a close contact of Lanka patient have tested positive for virus, making the total number of cases in the country to more than 2,650 as of 4 p.m. today. Moreover, 1,988 people have recovered from the virus as of today evening. In the meantime, at least 30 persons belonging to 7 families in Homagama have been sent for self-quarantine after 2 army officers from the area who are serving at the Kandakadu Rehabilitation Center tested positive for COVID-19. Furthermore, private hospital in Ragama has been closed after its general manager, who had conducted lectures at the Kandakadu Rehabilitation Center, was tested positive for COVID-19. Moreover, the government of Japan has donated $1 million worth essential health equipment to Sri Lanka in its efforts in further curtailing the COVID-19 threat in the country. Thus, 130 infusion pumps, 50 syringe pumps, 30 high-dependency unit beds, 20 multi-para monitors, 20 suction apparatus were some of the items included in the donation, and those will be provided with the needy hospitals soon. Furthermore, a meeting of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 headed by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa convened today afternoon to discuss further on the measures related to curtailing the COVID-19 virus in the country. The World Health Organization warns that with the outbreak of COVID-19, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. Nevertheless, addressing the regular COVID-19 press briefing held yesterday, WHO Director General Dr. Ghebreyesus explained how we can control the disease and get on with our lives.
Let me be blunt. Too many countries are headed in the wrong direction. The virus remains public enemy number 1. But the actions of many governments and people do not reflect of this. I want to be straight with you. There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. I repeat, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. But there is a roadmap to a situation where we can control the disease and get on with our lives. But this is going to require 3 things. First, a focus on reducing mortality and suppressing transmission. Second, an empowered, engaged community that takes individual behavior measures in the interest of each other. And third, we need strong government leadership and coordination of comprehensive strategies that are communicated clearly and consistently. It can be done. It must be done.
The latest United Nations report on the state of food security and nutrition in the world stresses that the COVID-19 pandemic could tip over 130 million more people into chronic hunger by the end of this. Moreover, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns that if the current trend continues, the world will not be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is zero hunger by 2030.
In much of the world, hunger remains deeply entrenched and is rising. Countries continue to grapple with malnutrition in all its forms, including the growing burden of obesity. The COVID-19 pandemic is making things even worse. Many more people could slip into hunger this year. We cannot let this happen. The report is clear. If the current trend continues, we will not achieve Sustainable Development Goal 2, zero hunger by 2030. Investment in COVID-19 response and recovery need to help deliver on our longer-term goal of a more inclusive and sustainable world. We must make food systems more sustainable, resilient and inclusive for people and planet. This is why I'm convening a Food Systems Summit next year. We must make healthy diets affordable and accessible for everyone.
Stay tuned for more news right after this commercial break. Welcome back after the break. Government has already directed the officials to purchase the paddy harvest in the Yalla season and announced that the necessary funds have already been released. Meanwhile, the government has also begun issuing letters to government contractors and suppliers, allowing them to go for loans from commercial banks. The Cabinet of Ministers earlier approved the government will purchase 1 kilo of paddy rice under the certified price of 50 rupees each. The Ministry of Finance, Economy and Policy Development in a statement says that a kilo of nadu paddy was priced at 38 rupees and a kilogram of samba at 41 rupees during the last year. The statement further adds that following the principles put forwarded by the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, this year government will allocate 50 rupees for a kilogram of paddy rice. The Finance Ministry also says that all the stores of the paddy purchasing boards have been kept open for the paddy farmers to sell their paddy harvest. The statement further adds that the Treasury has allocated the necessary funds to purchase the Yalla season harvest. Meanwhile, the government has also begun issuing letters to government contractors and suppliers confirming that the government owes money to them so that they can obtain loans from commercial banks against these debts. A release by the Ministry of Finance said that unpaid bills issued in 2019 and 2020 and registered up to the 31st of May 2020 will qualify for the scheme. The letter will be issued by the Treasury to the commercial bank nominated by the relevant contractor, and the relevant contractor should open a special account for this purpose at the nominated bank. The plan is that the Treasury from time to time will release the required funds to the relevant ministry or department to pay these bills. The central bank report states that the ratio of the price of exports to the price of imports has improved by 20.6% on year-on-year basis in May this year, with prices of exports having increased while prices of imports declining. Moreover, expenditure on merchandise imports declined notably by 44.3% on a year-on-year basis to $994 million in May 2020, recording a monthly expenditure of less than $1 billion for the first time since March 2010. The CBSL report states that the external sector has showed signs of stabilization with the removal of most lockdown measures in the country in the second week of May this year. The deficit in the trade account narrowed by $416 million in May this year to $407 million from $823 million in May 2019, as the decline in imports exceeded the decline in exports. Earnings from merchandise exports rebounded in May 2020 to $587 million, with the export sector gradually resuming activities following the relaxation of lockdown measures and the recovery of both domestic and global supply and demand chains to some extent. Earnings in May 2020 were more than twice the value recorded in April 2020. Major exports such as textiles and garments, rubber products, petroleum products, food, beverages and tobacco declined in May 2020, though earnings from these sectors recovered to about one-half of the monthly average value reported in 2019. However, led by a higher demand for personal protective equipment such as face masks, protective suits, surgical gloves, etc., earnings from exports of other made-up articles categorized under textiles and garments and surgical and other gloves categorized under rubber products grew significantly. On the other hand, expenditure on merchandise imports declined notably by 44.3% on a year-on-year basis to $994 million in May 2020, recording a monthly expenditure of less than $1 billion for the first time since March 2010. Expenditure on all major import sectors, consumer, intermediate and investment goods declined in May 2020. This reduction was mainly attributable to the measures taken by the government and the central bank since March 2020 to restrict the importation of selected goods, aiming at easing the pressure on the exchange rate and international reserves from the adverse effects created by the pandemic. The government of Japan has inked an agreement with the government of Sri Lanka to provide 340 million rupees grant for provision of necessary equipment to strengthen the investigation and detection capacities of drugs and related anti-narcotic activities of Sri Lanka police. Moreover, Japan has also provided a grant aid worth approximately 457 million rupees for the Human Resource Development Scholarship Project to enhance the capacity building of public sector officials of Sri Lanka. The prevalence of drug-related activities in Sri Lanka has increased in recent past, and it has been recognized as an emerging social problem in the country. As remedial action for controlling the situation, Sri Lanka police has identified the necessity of modern equipment to detect large-scale drug trafficking activities and the individuals under the influence of dangerous drugs. Accordingly, based on the request of the government of Sri Lanka, the government of Japan has agreed to provide nearly 340 million rupees grant under the Japanese non-project grant aid scheme for provision of necessary equipment to strengthen the investigation and detection capacities of drugs and related anti-narcotic activities of Sri Lanka police. The exchange of notes pertaining to the above grant was signed by Secretary of Ministry of Finance, Economic and Policy Development, S.R. Articular, and Ambassador of Government of Japan, Sugiyama Akira, at the Ministry of Finance, Economic and Policy Development yesterday. Moreover, Japan has also provided a grant aid worth approximately 457 million rupees for the Human Resource Development Scholarship Project to enhance the capacity building of public sector officials. Under the project, 17 public sector officials will be sent to pursue a 2-year master or PhD degree from 2021 to 2023, and areas of their degree cover public policy, public finance, economics, business management, environmental management, disaster management, and climate change. The exchange of notes for this project was also signed yesterday at the Ministry of Finance, Economic and Policy Development between Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, Sugiyama Akira, and Secretary of Ministry of Finance, Economic and Policy Development, S.R. Articular. Stay tuned for stock updates. The trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a positive note today. The all-share price index gained 67.35 points to close at 4,947.11, and the S&P SL20 gained 41.41 points to close at 2,113.51. The turnover was 1.8 billion rupees and over 49 million shares were traded. Up next are Forex rates. And that's all news for today. Follow the safety measures to stay away from the coronavirus. With that, we'll see you tomorrow with State of Business at the usual time. Until then, take care. Good night.